of bad publicity. We only see the egg carton when the eggs are gone. We don't see the role in terms of preservation and protection. We see the cornflakes box as a large something or other to be recycled, but yet it keeps the product fresh and crispy for us. The role of packaging is essentially one of protection and preservation. You have spent sometimes ages in getting your product right in terms of flavour and texture. You now want to ensure that your food product gets to your consumer in tip-top shape. Packaging mirrors social trends. It provides the consumer goods in specific quantities and in containers as demanded by you, the consumer. The product and the package should always be developed in tandem. Packaging is and has been defined in many ways, such as the slide in front of you. It's part of the manufacturing process. It's a management responsibility aimed at increasing sales and profits through correct design, both functional and aesthetic. Development of packaging should start as early as possible in the process of developing a new food product. It begins with an assessment of the product, its weight, size, shape, and characteristics, together with how it may or may not be damaged during transport and sale. Market conditions should be taken into account so that the pack will be acceptable to its target market. Method of distribution, so we can avoid various hazards, again taken into consideration. It should also be seen to be cost effective as well as being cost effective. Consideration for the environment is always important. Avoid waste and try to use recycled materials where possible. And above all, observe all legal requirements. Almost 70% of all packaging is used to protect food. In underdeveloped countries, losses can be high, but in developed countries such as ours, the losses are extremely low, usually less than 5%. And now let us look back in time and see how packaging has developed through the generations. The humble egg, almost unchanged for millennia because it does such a good job in terms of protection and preservation and with no human interference. Glass has been around for thousands of years, and following that we had wooden casks for beverages, butter, molasses, and so forth. Canning has been around for 1.5 centuries almost, and it's proved to be an excellent way of preserving food in a safe manner and giving it an extended shelf life. Plastic's with us for almost 100 years, and they play a huge role in packaging today. Other dates that are important: Adolf Coors made the first aluminium beverage can in 1954. Vacuum packaging came to the fore in 1970. And interestingly, Wrigley's gum were the first to use a UBC, or unique barcode, that could be scanned, and that was in 1974. And along with packaging, of course, came branding. It's hard to believe that Cadbury's are almost 200 years, only a decade short of 200 years in existence. Our own Tato's around since 1954. Kerrygold almost 60 years in existence. And when you mention Colgate, you think of toothpaste, toothbrushes, and yet they are around since 1873. The food packaging industry is absolutely huge. When you consider that Google gets somewhere in the region of 80,000 hits every second of every day, compare that to packaging, where we get 320,000 products packed every second of every day throughout the world. So 4 times the size of Google. But why do we need packaging? We need packaging to protect the goods against hazards during transport and sale, to enhance the sales appeal of the product, to ensure the quality of product, to preserve the contents up to the expected sell-by or use-by date, to provide information to the consumer. It must be convenient and it must be cost effective. Good quality packaging helps to provide the consumer with safe, wholesome foods that are good to eat. It extends the shelf life of the product and assists in widespread distribution, and to make the purchase of food much more convenient. The marrying of packaging to the food product reduces the impact of food spoilage in conjunction with common practices such as pasteurization, reduction of water activity, reduction of pH, and possibly the addition of preservatives. In addition to these, the use of modified atmospheres within the pack, where gaseous atmosphere can be altered to exhibit an antimicrobial effect, such as the addition of nitrogen or carbon dioxide. These are used to retard the growth of spoilage microorganisms and help to extend the shelf life of your food product. Let us look at the individual types of packaging, and we start firstly with paper and board. First developed in the 1700s, paper and board can only be recycled 5 or 6 times before the fibre length gets too small and it has to be sent for energy recovery, either in cement kilns or separate incineration facilities. Paper is used throughout the packaging industry, mostly as a wrapping material or as a laminate in pouches. Plain paper itself is not used to protect foods for long periods of time because it has poor barrier properties and is not heat sealable. When used as a primary packaging, that is, it's in contact with food, paper is almost always treated or coated with waxes, resins, or lacquers to improve functionality and protective properties of the paper. There are many different types of paper. Craft paper, or natural craft, is the strongest of all papers and is commonly used for bags and wrapping, such as flour, sugar, milk powders, dried fruits, and vegetables. Sulfite papers are much lighter, weaker than craft, but they can be glazed, they can be printed, coated for higher print quality, can be used primarily as a laminate to plastic and foil, which we'll speak about later. Used to make bags, wrappers, pouches, used a lot in biscuits and confectionery. We're all familiar with greaseproof paper, used to wrap snack foods, oily foods, and a use that's being replaced all the time by plastic film. Plastics are all given a resin code from 1 to 7. If you look at the base of any plastic packaging, you see a little triangle, such as the left-hand side of your slide, numbered 1 to 7. Polyethylene terephthalate, PET, is probably the most popular choice of packaging for many food products, particularly beverages and mineral waters. It's increasing steadily throughout the years, and the main reasons for its popularity is its glass-like transparency. It's a very good barrier to gases, and it retains carbonation. It's light in weight, shatter resistance. There's 3 major uses or applications of PET packaging. There's bottles, jars, tubs, semi-rigid or rigid sheets for thermoforming into trays, and tin-oriented films such as bags, snack food, wrappers. It should be noted that it's 100% recyclable, and recycled PET from bottles can be used as fibres and insulation and other non-food packaging applications. Number 2 is HDPE, or high-density polyethylene. Again, like number 1, is 100% recyclable, and many uses from milk cartons to juice to yogurt pots, etc., grocery bags. PVC, or polyvinyl chloride, commonly used in clamshell packaging to pack foods such as coleslaws and things like that you see in supermarkets. It's very cheap, can be surface printed, but there are environmental issues, right? It cannot be recycled, and it contains chlorine. There is a plant-based option, which is making its presence felt, and it's called PLA, or polylactic acid. It has the same functionality as PVC in that it's clear and can be used in clamshell for food packaging, and is compostable and biodegradable. Number 4, LDPE, low-density polyethylene, non-recyclable, used in bread bags, food bags, magazine covers, and so forth. Number 5 is polypropylene. It's microwavable, freezable, suitable for modified atmospheric packaging we mentioned earlier. What's really important about polypropylene is that it's heat resistant up to 160 degrees centigrade, so it makes hot filling viable. So you can take your bucket and hot fill it with preserves, with sauces and so forth, to get an extended shelf life. It's available in any colour, opaque, clear, relatively cheap, and 100% recyclable, which is very important. Polystyrene, mostly used for protective packaging such as egg cartons, and disposable foodware such as lids, cups, plates, bottles. In expanded form, polystyrene is used an awful lot in cushioning and non-food packaging. It cannot be recycled but can be incinerated. Number 7 covers a range of plastics such as nylon polyamide. And nylon goes into boil in the bag applications, turkey bags. Polycarbonate plastics such as your 5-gallon water containers that we have in our companies, baby bottles and so forth. But again, these plastics are non-recyclable. Glass has been around for thousands of years, mechanized glass making since the late 19th century. It has an extremely long history in food packaging. The first glass objects for food were believed to have appeared around 3000 BC. The production of glass involves heating a mixture of silica, sodium carbonate, calcium carbonate, alumina to very high temperatures in the region of 1200 degrees plus. It melts into a thick mass, poured into molds, and the molds give it its final shape. Recycled or broken glass called cullet is also used in manufacture and may account for as much as 60% of all raw materials used. Glass containers used in food packaging are often surface coated to provide lubrication in the production line and eliminate scratching or surface abrasion and the line jams. Glass coatings also increase and preserve the strength of the bottles or jars to reduce breakage, and this improved break resistance allows manufacturers to use thinner glass, which reduces weight and is better for disposal. Because it's odorless and chemically inert with virtually all food products, glass has several advantages for food packaging applications. Impermeable to gases and vapors, maintains product freshness for a long period of time without impairing the taste or flavour. Ability to withstand high processing temperatures. So it's useful for sterilization, whether it's in low acid or high acid foods. It's rigid, good transparency, as we can see from the slide in front of us. It allows the consumer to see the product within. Yet variations in glass color can protect the contents from light sensitive products such as green bottles, brown bottles, etc. And it benefits the environment very much because it's reusable and recyclable 100% of the time. However, like many materials, it has some disadvantages. Despite the wish to use thinner glass, it is heavy, it adds to transportation costs, and it can be brittle and susceptible to breakage from impact or thermal shock. On the metal side in packaging, we speak primarily of aluminium, commonly used to make cans, foil, and laminated to paper or plastic. It's lightweight, provides highly effective barrier to the effects of air, temperature, moisture, and so forth. On the left of our slide, we see aluminium trays used for ready meals and so forth. The bottom left, we see coffee, where we have an aluminium seal, foil seal, to protect in the pressure. To protect the actual flavor of the actual coffee. It should be noted that at greater than 17 microns, aluminium foil is a barrier to all gases, so it's commonly used as a sealing application, not only for coffee, but in the dairy industry as well. On the top right, we see foil as a use in pouches. The outer layer of the pouch is paper, then we have foil, and then we have polyethylene, which is a sealing medium, used for soups, powders, and so forth. It's non-toxic, doesn't damage the food within it, it protects it. Again, as I said, it's used in a range of food containers. It protects food against sunlight exposure, which can, in some cases, cause the food to go rancid. It doesn't melt from high temperatures, doesn't lose its shape. And as I said, on the top right, laminated with foil and paper, it ends up being a very rigid product and 3 times as waterproof as standard foil, even in hot climates. Foil with greaseproof paper on one side is used to pack butter, cheese, ice cream and other dairy products. And fruit juices and wines can be kept for extended periods of time at room temperature in containers made from paper, aluminium foil and polyethylene film. Recycled aluminium uses 95% less energy than production from scratch. So that's a figure that's very important. And just another piece of information, on average it takes just 60 days to manufacture one aluminium can, fill it with a beverage, deliver it to a store, sell it to a customer, recycle it, and make a new can from it. And this is a process which can be repeated ad infinitum. The final portion of my slide on the bottom right-hand side is pharmaceutical. It's an example of tamper evidence. It's the responsibility of the producer to get their products to the consumer in a fit and usable condition. The fact that a very few misguided people choose to interfere with product is difficult to prevent. And that's why we introduce tamper evidence. And aluminium foil is perfect for this. If we accept that it's almost impossible to produce a tamper-proof container at an acceptable cost, it follows then that manufacturers will direct resources to produce tamper-evident packs such as spirit bottles, where we have the roll-on caps, wine bottles, which you have shrink sleeves, jam jars where you have a paper label over the top, baby food, again shrink sleeve, or a lid that pops up. The majority of tamper evidence incidents do not have a criminal intent, but occur when a potential customer wants to see, taste, or smell the contents. It's very, very important when we talk about packaging that we actually know our product. On occasion, we spend so much time looking at percentage this and that we fail to actually understand our product and how packaging can be used to protect it. Does it need protection from light? We had an incident a few years back where a client was packaging a fresh product for sale on supermarket shelves. Alas, because it contained a type of fat, it was susceptible to damage by light. The client was only getting a handful of days due to rancidity. We covered the tray with a cardboard sleeve and doubled the shelf life immediately, protecting it from light. Does it need protection from moisture? If we leave biscuits unprotected, even for 24 hours, they will absorb moisture. Can we use packaging to extend our shelf life? Of course we can. Gas flushing is one of the most common methods used. We spoke about it earlier. Storage conditions also important. Ambient, chilled. If chilled, will the label absorb moisture and wrinkle during storage? And what are the age profile of your consumers? Will they have difficulty opening the pack? Other considerations. Is it being used to pack dry goods? So we want to prevent the passage of water vapor. Moist goods. Again, we want to take that into consideration. Oxygen. Some products are sensitive to oxygen, especially butter and nuts and so forth. And again, when packaging vegetables, one must be aware that these are living material and they consume oxygen and release carbon dioxide. And after being harvested and packed, if the packaging is unsuitable, oxygen is used and the vegetables will deteriorate. Anaerobic bacteria may begin to grow, produce off flavors, or even food safety issues. Sustainability is commonplace, but before we talk about that, we mentioned early on about packaging and its usefulness in terms of we only see our egg carton after the eggs have been used up and our cornflakes box and so forth. I put in this slide to make you aware of 50% of marine litter comes from single-use plastic items. And we've listed there drink bottles, food containers, bags, cutlery, straws, cotton buds, sanitary applications, balloons, balloon sticks, as the 10 most common plastic objects found in European beaches. That's not the fault of the packaging producer, it's the fault of us, the end user. So if we are to make an impact in terms of environmental issues, we need to look at ourselves and how we recycle and we recover and so forth. Sustainability is commonplace in today's world and is playing a huge role in development of new packs. Sustainability packaging is that which over time reduces its environmental impact. But always remember our first slide, the definition of packaging. protection, preservation during transport, filling, use and sale with consideration for the environment. Those are the essential rules of packaging, okay? And they should always be remembered. Sustainability for me is about the 3 R's: reduce, reuse and recover. When we talk about reduction of the amount of packaging used, this should always take prominence in the attack on waste management. Materials required should be the minimum necessary to meet all the requirements that I've mentioned of containment, protection, preservation, etc. Bread bags now use 35% less material than they did a decade ago. Refuse sacks, they're almost paper thin, 52% less material. Carrier bags, 45% less material. And fertilizer sacks on the farm are now 37% lighter than they were a decade ago. Reuse is defined as any operation by which packaging is designed to be refilled or used for the same purpose for which it was conceived, with a minimum number of trips or rotations. Refillable bottles, such as those used for milk or beer, are examples of reuse. Recycling, then, is defined as reprocessing of waste materials for the original or similar purpose. Examples would be paper. Avon insist on all in-house papers, computers, printers, etc., to be manufactured from recycled material. Plastics can also be recycled, and it's interesting to know that all of Sainsbury's plastic carrier bags are made from recycled plastic. Recovery usually means the collection of the raw material for the above purposes, but if none of the above are an option, then, waste material can be incinerated, and the resultant heat produced can be used as an energy source. Other important facts: glass jars and bottles now use 20% less material than they did 2 decades ago. Aluminium cans use 30% less material than they did 25 to 30 years ago. In terms of recycling, Ireland, believe it or not, is to the fore, and our targets are way ahead of our European guidelines. Our targets for glass recycling are 60%, and yet we recycle 84% and recover 84%. For plastic, our target is 22.5%. We recycle 34%, and we recover 78% of that. Paper, again, is 60% like glass. We recycle 79% and recover 91%, and those figures are from the Environmental Protection Agency. There's many new developments in plant-based packaging. I mentioned polylactic acid early on. Cellulose is also sourced from plant materials. But does that mean an increase in crop production? Is it morally correct to produce food for packaging? Does it mean a reduction of the rainforests? These are just issues that will come up over time, and a discussion needs to be had, not here today, but down the road it certainly does. Generation Green is a trend where consumers are looking at compostable, recycling and paper options. Hautomaki, a huge packaging company in Finland, have developed a compostable tray for Waitrose, and in its first year is expected to replace 6 million plastic food trays. However, that's only of use if we, the consumer, ensure that those compostable trays get into a compostable recycling facility. The Generation Green has come to the fore in pouch packaging, and our own Foxpack up in County Louth, as far as I know, make compostable, recyclable, peel and reseal pouches, which are absolutely invaluable in today's world. Let us look now at sustainability in terms of reduced waste. If we can increase shelf life, we spoke about modified atmospheric packaging by helping to increase shelf life. If we increase shelf life by 100%, that could be from 7 days to 14 days, 10 days to 20 days. It will reduce waste by 40%, and surely that should be a key in terms of sustainability. The key points that we've spoken about over the last few minutes: packaging is about preventing physical damage, preventing the ingress of microorganisms, prevent odor and taint pickup. It should be non-toxic, protect against light, above all be compatible with the foodstuff. It should control moisture loss or moisture gain. It should have the ability to retain specific atmospheres. Tamper evidence is important, as is cost effectiveness. It needs to communicate information to the consumer. It should open and close easily. And above all, when it's sitting on the supermarket shelf, it should be an attractant. It should have sales appeal. Is packaging justified? Absolutely. It can extend the shelf life, minimizing environmental impact through waste reduction. And a final figure, 97% of the carbon footprint rests within the food and only 3% within the food packaging. Good quality packaging can sell a poor product, but poor quality or badly designed packaging can destroy any market for an excellent product. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ed. That was
James.
a very concise trip through all the elements that we need to consider when it comes to packaging. Now, I suppose we'd throw the discussion open to the delegates, and we'll wait for questions to come through. But just to kick off, Ed, one of the things I noticed, I suppose everybody's noticed really, since the start of the current pandemic, is that there's been an increased use of maybe plastic wrapping, particularly now I'm thinking of things like when you go to a shop, usually, you know, you'd have the cakes and the scones available on a table, but they're all wrapped in.
We had a huge a huge amount of work done on the elimination of single-use packaging until COVID-19 came along. And now, as you say, James, it's not only in food, but the use of purchasing online, be it clothes, shoes, garden ornaments, whatever else, and a lot of those are coming in plastic bags as well. On the food side, yes, we have our croissants wrapped individually, we have our bagels wrapped individually, and you can ask yourself, is that overkill? Or because these single-use plastics are non-recyclable, the majority of films are non-recyclable, should we be using paper packaging?
Yeah, is that the only alternative to?
It's the only alternative. It's the only alternative at the moment. You know, we could use simple paper wrapping, but then you would have to have a label on it because your product is protected. Or we could have a paper bag with an envelope, but that envelope is usually a plastic film in itself. So are you promoting recycling? No, you're not. But the single-use plastics, they literally are taken over. Are they overkill? That's another day's work. But it's everywhere you go. They're being used.
I suppose there are advantages to it in terms of food hygiene anyway.
Food hygiene and protection and preservation and all that, regardless of COVID-19, just general hygiene. You would imagine, why weren't we doing this all along? You know, but then do people, when you go to a supermarket, do they like to get the smell of breads and cakes and so forth? It's a wonderful aroma. And pick up your own and pack your own.
Yeah, and you'll always like to go along and pick out the one that you want.
The one that you want, yeah. Rather be handed this small little croissant in a plastic wrap,
like a lucky bag or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, Ed, that in terms of glass packaging. For instance, I mean, if you recall, 30 years ago, you know, we can both go back that far anyway.
We can.
You know, your milk was delivered in glass bottles at the time. Is it just pure cost that has transition?
It's actually far cheaper, James, now to produce milk in glass bottles, believe it or not. Because when I was a young fella, glass bottles were used all the time for milk, and they were delivered to schools in small little 250ml size glass bottles as well. The problem at the time was the actual return usage of the glass bottles were about 1 in 5. In other words, they lasted about 5 runs before they were smashed. Nowadays, research has shown they last between 21 to 25 uses, right? Because people are more concerned about the environment, and there's better techniques there for washing, drying, and reusing Okay, they have become popular again in the UK, but one of the disadvantages is when you have a milk delivery guy or person who is delivering crates of milk by the bottle, there's a huge weight in that. Whereas your 1 litre carton or your plastic 2 litre, they're delivered, there's no returns back to base and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's the inconvenience of that, but it is actually cheaper to pack in glass, believe it or not.
That's extraordinary. And
Yeah.
I mean, of the two, glass is clearly more environmentally friendly.
Oh, God, absolutely huge, 100% recyclable.
Yeah. We have a question, Ed. Hi, Ed. Thanks for the talk. My son produces gourmet mushrooms, mainly for chefs, but wants to get into shops more. Do you know any packaging suppliers that would do a breathable box? Something like an egg box, for instance, I would think, cannot be totally sealed. Thank you.
Cannot be totally sealed is a contradiction in terms. What you're looking at is, and my colleagues in Ashtown in Dublin have some new state-of-the-art packaging equipment in terms of tray and seals and that. What I would look at is a tray with a seal on top, but that you would modify the atmosphere inside to ensure a good, healthy product for a number of days. Is possibly the best answer. However, if you want to contact me directly through my email address, you're more than welcome.
Okay, thanks for that. Jenny just wants to make a point. Huhtamäki have developed a range of carton board boxes for fruit and veg. So that might pertain then to the previous question as well. So
that's right, yeah.
So, yeah.
They're a wonderful company. They also have a branch in the north of Ireland.
All right. So they're contactable.
Yeah.
Huhtamäki, yeah. Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, there are. Hi, Ed, any advice on adhesives for labels for chilled products? Looking for an environmentally friendly adhesive label. Yeah,
one of the issues there is there's cold application and hot application of glues, right? The hot application would be an old-fashioned way of doing it, where you have glue and the label rubs against that. But in terms of environmentally friendly, casing glue is used in the beer industry because beer bottles are recyclable and it's easy to clean off using caustic soda. But in terms of applications, you're welcome to email me. I would have to do some checking online for you. But off the top of my head, there's nothing that jumps out in terms of environmentally friendly.
Okay, and we've had a question here. It's Huhtamäki, Huhtamäki is the contact for those new packaging solutions, and they're based in Belfast.
Yeah.
Ed, do you think plant-based plastic is the solution if the consumer will not change their habits of disposing of empty packaging?
We can only do
like you travel up and down the country, and so do I. Most of us will, do our best to recycle our plastics, but look at the ditches in Ireland, and they're
James, we're a horrible, dirty country. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see the sides of the motorways. That's down to personal choice of throwing something out the window, and an awful lot of what we see on the motorways and byways are actually recyclable. And if we can start there in terms of waste reduction, recyclable, yes, a lot of work has been done on plant-based packaging, and an awful lot of work needs to be done. But one of the problems that people fail to see in terms of biodegradable is the actual sealing medium is usually something like ethylene vinyl alcohol, EVOH, and that is non-compostable. But it makes the seal very proper. So a lot of work needs to be done on getting the sealing medium right. It could be polyethylene, but polyethylene, while it's recyclable, it's not compostable. So there are technical challenges out there, and there's a huge amount of work being done behind the scenes, especially in Germany, on that. And it's something we just have to progress with and embrace. Personally, if I saw fruit salad packed in PLA clamshells, I would buy that way, way, way ahead of polyvinyl chloride, because it's just a nasty one for the environment.
Yeah,
and the reason it's purchased is that it's very cheap.
Yes, and that PLA being polylactic acid.
Polylactic acid, yeah.
Yeah, and that's fully compostable.
Fully compostable, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ed, can I ask you, I am producing meat products. First product is a burger, and looking for a packaging that is as friendly as possible to the environment and rustic. Is there packaging that is recyclable and can be compostable for these products?
You often see in supermarkets now black trays, right? And the reason black trays were introduced is that the red meat looks really, really good against black. But recent designs, and my colleague Shivani Patania in Ashtown in Dublin has done a bit of work on this, and she would be a great point of contact for trays. There are a number of options out there. Again, the Hautamaki tray for ready meals can be used for burgers and so forth as well, and that's compostable.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. I think that's all. Do we have any more questions coming through? I don't think there is. Okay. Well, Ed, I'm going to bring it to a close there. Thank you, Ed, for a very informative description of the elements that we need to consider when choosing the correct packaging for our products. Ladies and gentlemen, the link to this webinar will be emailed to you in the coming days. I hope you found it to be of benefit. And I presume if you have any questions, then you can just submit them. Ed, did you say that you're willing to...
You can stick in my email with that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and a very good morning, or good afternoon, I suppose, at this stage to you. Thank you.